Good evening, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I'm going to wait a few minutes, see if we can get some people on. But wanted to make sure I talk about a very specific word tonight because it relates to me directly. And if you look in the post, you see I'm talking about asshole. And so I'm going to reiterate this a few times throughout the video here so people catch on to this. Because I want to tell everybody, when people call me asshole, I look them right in the eye. And I tell them, let's get this straight. I'm not an asshole. I'm the whole ass. And I mean that. Because there are times where I have to put my foot down and not let people be obtrusive to me. And that's one of those things that I definitely don't feel I am, is that I'm an asshole. I do my best to be blunt. I do my best to be truthful. But I try to make sure to do it with respect and decency. And just because it might be hurtful to somebody else because they have to face the truth doesn't mean I'm being an asshole. So again, when people call me an asshole, I tell them, let's make sure we get this straight. I'm not an asshole. I'm the whole ass. And we're going to put this shit straight. So that's what I'm going to talk about tonight, is put something straight here. And first I want to talk about our federal government. And a lot of people need to realize where our federal government came from. The concept of our federal government came from something known as a federation of tribes. And the whole basis of it was fairness, fair and impartiality. Because the native tribes didn't depend on a monetary system. But yet they had to interact tribally to make exchanges, because some tribes might have lived on the one side of the mountain and had different game and resources and stuff available, whereas the tribe on another side of the mountain might not have the same resources. But they had others that this tribe didn't, so they could exchange them. And the Federation of Tribes was merely the start of the trials that we know today. But it was only instituted under our commercial system, because the Federation of Tribes took matters before a council. Before any tribes went to war, if things came, caused a controversy, then that controversy was taken up before a tribal council that then they didn't regulate, but then they took in the facts and discerned for themselves in their own opinions, in that fair and impartiality, what a good and fair and impartial resolution would be, an outcome for that particular event. What our government has done today is taken one particular event and slapped a regulation to it for future events. And that's the only thing that commerce thrives on, is future. That's why we have futures markets. That's why we call them profits, because we're going to expect interest and inflation charges to be able to tack on to what we want to sell now for a future date. And see, the Indian tribes didn't do that. They couldn't do that because they depended upon what they could harvest each and every season, which fluctuated. So they knew already that because that next year might not produce so much corn, they couldn't agree now with the neighboring tribe to produce enough corn for them next year because they were able to do it this year. And so again, that's the whole reason that commerce came about, is for futures, for the profits through interest and inflation. And it's a system that takes advantage over others. And that's what our government, our federal government, has done through contracts that allow them to perform contracts with each state, and then allow each state to perform contracts within those states. And very simply, this is stated first in the 10th Amendment and then in the 11th Amendment. We're not going to talk about the 11th Amendment tonight, but I again want to go over the 10th Amendment because it is relative directly to who is the asshole. We're going to play a game, Who's the Asshole? And I'm going to tell you who the assholes are. Because when it comes to that 10th Amendment, what it is, it's a separation of powers. But what they've done is they've mixed water and oil because they use powers as the subject of the 10th Amendment in relation to three different things. They're using them in relation to two fictional entities in accordance with living beings. And they can't do that. So what we need to do is fix the 10th Amendment to show that discerned separation of powers. And a good way to do that would be simply to start it off by adding that the powers not delegated by the people to the United States in the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are therefore reserved respectively to the states, while the powers of delegation remain with the people always. Something to that wording, just to correct that error in mixing water and oil. That's all we have to do. And that's what I'm going to say we need to do with the 11th Amendment too. Because the problem with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the further amendments isn't that any of it is necessarily bad or that any of it's necessarily good. It's the people that are operating it. The people that are using it. And the people that we have in office that are using that now are not using it appropriately. They're not using it per its intent. And that's what we need to get back to, is the intent. And if we can just, because everything has a gray. Everything has a black and a white, and so there's a gray area. And we need to get back to that gray area to get a more uniform quality amongst all of us, including in the commercial system. And so when it comes to that 10th Amendment, what I'm saying here is we're the whole ass. And we need to start using that ability to put our foot down and say, listen, people, if you don't understand where your ability comes from to be that asshole, comes from the ass first. Without the ass, there is no asshole. And so when it comes to that 10th Amendment where they're declaring those powers, we have to assert that we're the whole ass that allows you to fart, motherfucker. And we have to do this, like I spoke in the video yesterday with John Swan. The First Amendment is what we're supposed to do. Hey, Brother John, just getting ready to talk to you about last night's conversation where we talked about the First Amendment and asserting our power to redress the government. And I was explaining to everybody about this game called Who's the Asshole? And that 10th Amendment and fixing that 10th Amendment. Because when people call me an asshole, I tell them, let's get it straight. I'm not an asshole. I'm the whole ass. And that's only because, and people only call me an asshole because they take what I say personally or emotionally instead of understanding that I say things in a blunt and truthful manner. And if you can't handle that, that's on you, brother. That's on you. Just because I tell you the truth doesn't mean I'm an asshole. People that like me because I tell them the truth. People that don't like me because I tell them the truth. And so when it comes to playing this game of who's the asshole in that 10th Amendment, I urge people to redress the government to fix that 10th Amendment and reword it correctly or in a more correct manner so that the powers that are delegated within are not mixed. When they're using the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are therefore reserved respectively to the states or the people, that's belaying in a contrast that the powers are the same between the states or the people. They are not. And so I recommend that we put forth some kind of redress to fix that 10th Amendment to be better worded as such in like wording, that the powers not delegated by the people to the United States in the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved respectfully to the states, but the powers of delegation shall forever remain with the people. So basically what I'm talking about, and if you've seen some of my videos about grammar is mathematical, basically what we're going to do is fix the error of the mathematics of the 10th Amendment. And again, same with the 11th Amendment. When I get my research done, John, I want to do a video and you and I will talk about the 11th Amendment. And I want to talk about how we fix that 11th Amendment by showing that separation of powers. And remembering once again that when it comes down to who's the asshole, we're the ones that got to step up with that First Amendment redress of grievances and tell them, hey, listen, asshole, if it weren't for me being the ass, you wouldn't have no place of reference to fucking fart. And this is what I'm talking about asserting your power, asserting your rights, asserting your authority. This is what John is talking about when he talks about if they want to deny that, if they want to ignore that, that's when you assert your power to force of arms. Just like they did in Ohio, they wanted to go in and take their guns. So they said, okay, come take our guns. And they did it in force with their guns, openly in public, said, here, come take them. Guess what? The CEO of Ohio, the state of Ohio, the CEO, the governor, declared an emergency withdrawal of that state legislation before they even got to get out to the streets. So you got to understand, when we start asserting our knowledge in force, they will back down. It's a matter of nature. See when the hold on. When these clowns in this federal government think that they hold more power than natural law, let me explain something to you about natural law. When the scales of a balance of life get thrown over, where a predator is going to wipe out the prey, Mother Nature has a tendency where the prey, the victim, turns around, and in order to balance that, they must prey on the predator. And I urge you people, it's time to quit praying and start praying. You need to start becoming the whole ass and let them know what their point of reference is to even fart to begin with. Like I said, people call me an asshole, and I got to tell them, look, I'm not an asshole. I'm the whole ass, and I'm here to set the truth right. And that's all it is. If you don't like me being blunt about things and being honest, that's on you. You're the one that can't handle that fart. So anyway, this is what we're going to start talking about. Like I said in my video last night, and John's right, I should start working more on that Constitution. I know the Constitution pretty well, but and again, John, right along with what you said, I'm at a point where I don't need to concentrate on the Constitution, and that's why I don't. But I understand that that's a good reference point for a lot of people to start out. And so I'm going to go back and I'm going to do some more research, and we're going to get together and we're going to do some videos and help these guys learn this stuff. Because like I touched on last night in the video with John, that 11th Amendment is important, and it's important in the same manner. Because what the federal government did in regards to the executive branch concerning the Congress, they created a second Congress. And they did so without actually delineating the powers of the two separate Congresses so that the common man can understand how they operate. One operates commercially, and that's where they enforce the IRS code as if though it's supposed to be enforced, because it is. It's only enforceable in the commercial realm. And that's why they have to have proof of contract. They have to have time logs. They have to have identifications. The numbers are the identification. Understand, a driver's license isn't identification of just yourself. The driver's license is identification of the employee, and the employer is named on the top. Your identifications all start out with the employer. Look at it. It'll say the state of Ohio, the state of Iowa, the state of Florida. That's the employer. And you gave them a social security number because they told you needed to get a driver's license. What'd you take to them for identification to prove that you were who you were? Social security card and a certificate of live birth. Remember, birth certificate is not to be used for identification. So when you wrote into the state Bureau of Vital Statistics to get a birth certificate, they sent you a certificate of live birth. Can't use a birth certificate for identification. But you can use a certificate of live birth for identification. Funny how that works. Anyway, think about this stuff and realize you guys need to start becoming the whole asshole. And put these assholes in their place. Let them know when they can fart. Squeeze them butt cheeks. Squeeze them real tight. Anyway, like I said, John, I'm going to do some studying on the 11th Amendment. I'll get with you and we'll sling out a video for these people. Meantime, God bless. If it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. Have a great night. Love you. Bye.